They called our fight a distant war. They doubled their defense budget overnight. After my family escaped Mariupol, I watched from afar as Europe walked to reality. The same leaders who once denied we were in danger now poured billions into their armies. My home's ruin became a global alarm bell, and no one could ignore it. Across North America and Europe, defense budget jumped. NATO reported a record 9.4% global military spending rise in 2024, the biggest since the Cold War, driven largely by Europe's surge. For example, in 2024, Europe's spending, including Russia, hit nearly $7,000 billion, a 17% leap. Even excluding Russia, EU, NATO, Europe's budgets jumped from roughly €240 billion in 2021 to an estimated €326 billion in 2024, around 1.9% of GDP. In real terms, that is over a 50% rise in just 3 years. Countries announced new funds. Poland now budget nearly 4.2% of GDP, around $38 billion on defense, and Germany boosted its spending 28% in 2024 to $88 billion. The Council of the EU confirms EU member states' collective spend up 30% from 2021 to 2024. Even North American allies stepped up. Canada pledged $20 billion more to finally hit the NATO 2% target in 2025. The US remains far larger at around $1 trillion, 3.2% of GDP in 2024. But even its budget has grown as Congress authorized multi-year aid packages for Ukraine. There were political taboos about military spending. Countries that long resisted increase, for example Germany's no-combat troops tradition, reversed course. NATO members agreed that core allies should reach 3.5% of GDP by 2030 and even 5% by 2035. This was spurred by leaders like Dutch Premier Minister Rutte and by US pressure. As one European finance minister said privately, meeting a 5% aim would be a Herculean task. Still, the planning baseline has shifted upward. Major procurement programs on everything from fighters and ships to missiles have been approved at blending speed. Defense, R&D and munitions, stockpiling and also surgery. In summary, the war has forced a defense revival. Budgets are expanding now, with new public support even for previously fringe ideas like the US proposal of 5% NATO benchmark, even if 5% looks aspirational. Ukraine became a dividing line or rallying cry in elections. In most Western countries, support for Ukraine has become the difficult position, with very few mainstream parties backing it. For example, Britain's October 2024 election debate saw both Labour and Conservatives promise unwavering aid. Visiting Kyiv in May 2024, UK's Labour leadership wrote an ironclad commitment to Ukraine, saying if there is a change in government, there will be no change in Britain's resolve to stand with Ukraine. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak likewise announced boosting defense to 2.5% of GDP by 2030 and increasing Ukraine's support. This cross-party consensus, absent from any other foreign crisis, illustrates the new norm. Even traditionally, isolationist of far-right voices have been muted. For instance, in Sweden's 2022 election, the ascendant nationalist party toned down any pro-Russian rhetoric, as a public opinion strongly favored defending Ukraine. In France's 2024 election, President Macron defeated his far-right challenger, Le Pen. Both had promises to uphold EU sanctions and aid to Ukraine. Le Pen had moderated her previous praise of Putin during the campaign. That said, the war has energized some nationalist or populist figures. A search of liberal rights in Europe, from Poland to Italy to Czechia, has complicated the picture. In Central and Eastern Europe, long-ruling Poland's Law and Order party, PiS, narrowly saw its candidate win a presidential election, showing the enduring appeal of conservative nationalism. In Romania, a pro-EU incumbent won by a hair over a populist challenger who openly opposed Ukraine aid. Germany's far-right AfD doubled down on nationalism in the February 25 election, becoming the second largest party. However, it has been essentially isolated politically. Even AfD leaders admit that to gain power they must moderate their image, join Italy's Meloni, the far-right Italian premier, who nevertheless vowed Ukraine's support until victory. The Atlantic Council warns that such far-right gains threaten Europe's solidarity with Ukraine and could hinder the military build-up needed if the US ever disengages. Indeed, some incumbents have explicitly blamed disunity for inviting Russian aggression. The conflict has also given rise to a new coalition. In Canada, newly appointed Defense Minister Bill Blair joined the Pan-Atlantic Rearm Europe initiative, signaling a pivot from reliance on the US to deeper Europe-NATO cooperation. Many center-left and liberal parties, for example in Germany, the Netherlands, Scandinavia, have integrated strong defense and aid-plan position to ward off populists. In the US, the 2024 election cycle has featured both parties reconfirming NATO commitments, although at times uneasily. Republican figures privately criticized aid levels, while Democrats pushed to more support. Overall, support for Ukraine has become almost a litmus test for Western mainstream parties, with new unity felt across traditional divides. Only fringe candidates or parties linked to Moscow push negotiation with Russia over arming Kyiv. From the start, Western leaders have framed the Ukraine war as a battle for shared values. Their language reflects the new tenor. Ursula von der Leyen, on the battlefield's moral stakes, she declared in early 2023, "We stand by Ukraine's side without ifs and buts," stressing that Kyiv is fighting for our shared values, for the respect of international law and for the principles of democracy. And that is why Ukraine has to win this war. Her words capture how the conflict is discussed as one of democracy versus aggression. Olaf Scholz. In that seminal 2022 speech, Scholz vowed that Germany, and by extension the West, would never accept the use of force as a political instrument, and will not until peace in Europe is secured. These pledges, uttered of the Bundestag floor, signaled Germany's break with the post-Cold War pacifism. They have since become a recurring theme. Scholz often reminds Europeans that defending Ukraine is defending the post-war order itself. Joe Biden. At NATO's summit in July 2024, Biden forcefully put the war in existential terms. Putin wants nothing less than Ukraine's total subjugation. To wipe Ukraine off the map, Ukraine can and will stop Putin, he said. He later noted that today's NATO is stronger than it's ever been before, reflecting transatlantic resolve. Biden's rhetoric, invoking democracy and history, underscored the US support for Ukraine is framed as defending Europe and liberal order. Emmanuel Macron warned from the start that European unity was crucial. Europeans' unity is key because division is one is Russia's war objectives, he said as early as September 22. This quote has been frequently repeated, especially when Eastern and Western EU members disagree on specific measures. Macron's message, only a united West can outlast Putin's strategy. Similar tones came from the Prime Minister like Justin Trudeau and Giorgia Meloni. Leading a right-wing government pledged in 2024 that Italy will stand by Ukraine until the war ends, reflecting how even non-leftist governments adopted pro-Ukraine stances. In some, Western politics have been indelibly marked by this war. Alliance hardened, budgets grew, policies pivoted, and leaders repeatedly invoked democracy, freedom and solidarity. As one EU official put it early on, Russia believes it can rewrite history with bullets. The West's response has been to reassert democratic values and institutions everywhere, from NATO's expanding role to Europe's climate-friendly energy overhaul. Looking back from the mid-2025, the lasting legacy is clear. The invasion accelerates trends that were already there. Renewables, deeper NATO cooperation, and broke through barriers that seemed unbreakable. Massive military spending increases, ending centuries of neutrality. This transformed Western politics and the citizens and analysts We have been left to absorb, adapt, and as leaders say, never accept aggression as normal. From Mariupol's ashes to Europe's parliaments, this war reshaped our politics forever. We learned that freedom demands defense, and unity is our best shield against aggression. I'm Mikita with Mariupol Refugee. If you believe in democracy, hit subscribe, share this video, and let's keep this conversation alive, because peace without vigilance is just another waiting battle.